Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's Wendy Sellers, the HR lady, and we are in episode 4 of 5. We're talking about proactive steps with employment law with our super awesome, amazing employment attorney, David Miklas, and also JC.
Wendy, before we get into it, I know that we're in episode 4, but I'm not. I've been trapped, I tell you, amongst a plethora of amazing information at MiklasEmploymentLaw.com. I stopped by there. I was checking out some of the legal updates and everything that's listed. It was pretty fantastic. David, is that your website or is this someone else?
Yeah, no, that's mine. That's mine. I write all those articles that are in there too.
Beautiful. Really. I mean, if you haven't had a chance, stop by, check that out. Highly recommend it. Back to you.
Hey, we want to talk about, a very heated topic, a very necessary topic, such as mental health in the workplace. It's been decades that we talk about healthcare, and it's usually because people want healthcare insurance. Employers, for when we won't get into the politics of it, employers, for whatever reason, are the ones that are providing healthcare instead of the government. But now it's not just about physical health. It's about mental health. What are the trends, David, that you're seeing in mental health awareness that is connected to employment law and possibly lawsuits?
Yeah, so I did just hear on NPR today, and I don't know when this is going to get released, but today is July 26th, that they said that President Biden's administration is going after healthcare for not allowing mental health referrals. And in fact, just yesterday, July 25th, the Department of Labor announced that several agencies, the Department of Labor, HHS, and Treasury all announced proposed rules to strengthen mental health parity and Addiction Equity Act. And where I see this is during the pandemic, I saw some studies come out that said, I think it's like 50% of the population has some type of depression or anxiety. So these are all mental health illnesses. Usually they can rise to a level of a disability, which would trigger ADA obligations for the employer. And we're starting to see this. These are invisible disabilities, but they're still covered by the ADA. And just today, I dealt with 2 phone calls, one involving anxiety, an employee with anxiety, and another one with an employee with ADHD. And both of them gave that as an excuse for their poor performance. They're basically getting written up. One was on a PIP, and they're, fixing to fire these people. And they said, well, hold up. You can't fire me because I'm disabled. I can't do that because my ADHD is causing that. So, and also, during COVID, I've seen it where someone says that they had brain fog as part of long COVID. And these are all things. Normally, if someone can't do the job, you fire them or you discipline them. But, the law requires you to do certain things if the employee is disabled. And for instance, if someone is a poor performer and they say, hey, hang on, I'm having a hard time understanding this because I have ADHD. I'm not a visual learner. Can you put it in writing? Okay, so that does 2 things. One, they told you that they're disabled and they asked for a reasonable accommodation. So if it's something that you can do, great. Put it in writing to them, and you've engaged in that interactive process that the ADA requires, and you've given them a reasonable accommodation. So these are definitely things, and if it's a larger employer, then you may also be covered by the FMLA, and that may come into play too.
Some awesome. Statistics real quick for you, supporting what David was just saying from the ADA numbers. 43% of employers have seen a spike in reasonable accommodation requests related to mental health since the coronavirus pandemic started. About 20% of American workers live with a mental health condition, and more than 1 in 5 adults live with a mental illness. Wendy, back to you.
Yeah, David, you ended that statement over there. I was actually sitting here thinking, hey, does the FMLA comply too? So you may have the overlap of the ADA and the FMLA, and then in some very probably rare circumstances, injuries related to workers' comp too. But going back to mental health, the overlap of the FMLA and ADA, I don't know, 2 of the most complicated laws that are out there.
Yeah. And, I mean, the take-home message, the steps that employers can take to create a supportive environment and prevent lawsuits would be frankly, to train HR and to train the managers. HR typically does go to conferences where someone like me speaks. At the very least, they should go to their local SHRM chapter, whatever the equivalent is at your local county HR conference, because they'll bring in a speaker. Someone, at least once a year, should talk on this kind of stuff. But then you need to go back and take that information and train your managers, or bring in an outside expert to train those managers. Another thing that the business can do is offer an EAP program. Usually the EAP programs that I deal with, they offer counseling sessions, such as, hey, you can go to counselor 6 times for free. That is an amazing asset for someone that is struggling with mental health issues.
David, I have a question for you. It's been said before that generally public sector employers and private business employers with more than 50 workers are covered under both the ADA and FMLA. What if there's less than 50?
That's a good question. So if there's less than 50, then like a private business with 30 employees, it's not covered by the FMLA. Now, there may be some state requirements in a certain state that may, impose certain obligations, but at a federal level, the FMLA will not apply to a private company or nonprofit with less than 50 employees. But the ADA would apply if you have 15 or more. So no matter what we're talking, as long as you have 15 or more employees, you're still going to have to go through that interactive process, determine is there a reasonable accommodation you can provide. And if the FMLA did apply, then what that does is that provides the employee with 12 weeks of job protected leave. That means you can't fire them pretty much during that 12-week leave that they're taking. And then when they come back, let's assume that they can come back at the end of their 12 weeks. Then you've complied with the FMLA. But let's say they can't come back for like another week. Well, that essentially might be a request for a reasonable accommodation under the ADA for one more week of leave on top of that 12 weeks. And you probably should be giving them that one extra week as an accommodation. That's some of the overlap that I regularly see. And certainly the worst thing you can do is fire someone while they're on FMLA leave. That's always going to result in a lawsuit.
That has been very helpful. That was going to be my question as well, is it's like you're reading my mind over here of, what if FMLA runs out? And folks that are listening, if you've never had to deal with ADA and reasonable accommodation, there is an amazing website called Ask Jan. Ask Jan Job Accommodation Network. So askjan.org, I believe it is. And it is super, super helpful. But just to let you know, it's also just as helpful to employees as it is as employers. So this is where you need to be doing your research, calling people that can help, somebody like David or an attorney in your state, and then someone like me as well, or another HR consultant, because it is very confusing and there's a lot of information out there. Thanks for listening, everybody, to episode 4 of 5 of our 5-part series on proactive steps with employment law. We do have one more session coming up soon, and we're going to be talking a little bit about another hot topic, diversity, equity, inclusion. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.